In the history of the WWE Championship, there have been 13 different primary designs, and in this video, I'm going to be tier ranking all 13 of them. Now, before we get started, a quick disclaimer: this is purely based on the look of the championship, as well as my personal feelings towards the belt. And we're not going to be covering the variants of each design, right? Because if we do that, we will be here forever. There are so many different versions of each one, but I'm talking purely the primary versions of each design. Let's kick things off firstly with the original WWWF Championship belt. Now, I know this title looks a bit weird. It looks massively different to all the rest of the championships. But before I tell you my thoughts on it, I'm actually going to tell you quickly the quick history of it, because this is absolutely fascinating. In 1963, Buddy Rogers came to the WWWF, and at this time, he was carrying around and defending this championship with him that he was calling the United States Championship. And there's contradicting stuff about whether or not he defended it in the NWA or not. It was a little bit confusing, and there's a lot of contradictory stuff around it. But the bottom line is, he was defending this US title across America, and he came to the WWF, and he was crowned the first ever WWWF champion. And they just used this belt. They kept his belt for a little bit of time, right? And it is just fascinating, the fact that, he just had a belt, and they were like, okay, well, we don't have one yet, so screw it, we'll make this the championship. So that's why this belt does look a little bit like a mid-card belt. He then lost it to Bruno. Bruno Sammartino held the belt for a little bit before they introduced the next design, when they actually commissioned their own championship. At this time, the WWWF gave the title back to Buddy Rogers to keep, and he gave it to a friend of his, and his friend's widow, so after he passed away, found it in their attic years later, and she posted on social media, or I think it was just like forums at the time or whatever, and she was asking, what is this? And fans quickly identified it as the first ever WWWF championship, and a belt maker actually bought it off of her. Then at this time, WWE went to the belt maker and were like, please, can we have it? It wasn't easy because he didn't want money for it, but instead they gave him an unnamed one-of-one piece of memorabilia. They then presented this to Bruno Sammartino when he went into the Hall of Fame. A really great moment. And honestly, maybe it's the story of this championship, but I do think there's actually something quite nice about it. It looks different to all the others. Does it look worn down? Does it look, old? Yes, but that's why I like it, right? So I'm probably going to be in the minority here, but I'm actually going to put this in the thumbs up column. I do quite like it. Up next, we're the first commissioned WWF Championship belt, and this one, I'm going to be honest, I really just don't like, right? I mean, I don't know why. It reminds me of, like, the police, basically. Like the British police, like the British police caps they used to wear back in the day. I just think this looks actually almost cheaper than the previous one, and it just doesn't have anything really about it which I like. And this was used for 8 years as well, so quite a while. But for me, I think it's a steaming pile of dump. But from here, they introduced a new belt, and I actually despise this one, right? They only had this for a year. It was held by Pedro Morales, but I absolutely hate this design. My least favorite WWE Championship design by absolute miles. In fact, it's so diabolical, it makes me sick. Then from here, they introduced the first belt, which I think people would actually consider looks, fairly like a championship belt, which could be used today. Now, what's really annoying about this belt is I actually preferred the version of it they used right at the start for about just a couple of months in 1972 to 1973, because you could actually see the eagle a little bit more, and I absolutely loved that. But then this version, which you can see now, is the primary one they used. Now, they did use different colored straps throughout. A red strap was actually used for quite a while, and I do think it looks a lot better on the red strap. But even still, I mean, I like this. I think it's very much, a vintage title design, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily one of my favorites, but I definitely put it in the decent column. The red strap variant, though, definitely deserves higher if we're, purely basing it off variants. Up next, we have the big green WWF Championship design, and I know this one creates a lot of controversy. A lot of people don't like this, right? In fact, a lot of people say it inspired the 24/7 Championship, which of course is something you never want to be, have to say. But this championship itself reminds me of a boxing title, right? And there is just something really special about it. It does feel like a world championship belt. Does it divide opinion? Yes, it's probably like Marmite. Some people love it, some people hate it. But hey, screw it. I love it and it gets a subtle round of applause off me. But before we go any further with this list, if you guys could leave a like and comment, that would be massively appreciated. It really helps us out here at Wrestling Republic. Thank you. The next design is more reminiscent of what a championship belt is today, and this was only ever worn by Hulk Hogan, but was worn by Hulk Hogan for quite a few years, right? And this belt I do quite like, but then I also think that the oval shape in the middle is a little bit too weird. It just feels too tall, and the strap at the back goes so thin as well. I just think, like, this had the potential to be such a great belt, and if they just reshaped it a little bit, I think it could have been. But from the thin strap at the back to the oval just being too tall, I'm going to be honest here, I don't know how I feel about it. So I'm going to put it in the I don't care section. But up next, we had the Winged Eagle design, the belt which every wrestling fan absolutely loves, and I am one of them. This is a banger of a belt, goes in the highest category possible, potentially the best looking championship belt of all time. It feels like a world championship. It looks fantastic. It looks fantastic on camera too. But it is also unique. It is distinctive. It's got tons of little details, which I just love. So for me, this is arguably the best belt they've ever done. Now time for another controversial opinion, because the Big Eagle is what we're talking about next. And honestly, right, despite the fact that so many great storylines and moments featured this title, which I actually think maybe does push it up a little bit, I still really don't like the design. I really don't. I think it's a massive downgrade from the one before, so I'm going to put it in the thumbs down category. But up next, we have the Undisputed Championship. And again, this has tons of little details which I do quite like. Again, so many great moments happened with it. And it does look more unique and less basic compared to the Big Eagle. But even still, I don't think it's as good as others, right? And it still looks a little bit generic. And I don't know, this is a massively hot take, but I do think the Undisputed Championship does look great, but does look massively like a mid-card belt. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in the I don't care section. I know, another boiling hot take here. The comments on Instagram are going to absolutely destroy me for this list. I can already see it. Up next, we have the spinner belt. And the reason why we're doing this video today, actually, because on this week's episode of Raw, John Cena said that this was the best WWE Championship belt ever. And listen, it's got a cult following. A lot of people around my age say this is such a great belt. It was the belt we grew up with. But a lot of people older say this feels like a toy. It's not a real championship belt. But it is unique. It is distinctive. And like I said, this is my own personal ranking. And I grew up with it. So screw it. It can take my money. I really do think this is overhated. I do, right? Is the spinner a little bit cringe? Of course it is, right? But there are so many unique details about this belt. It looks unique and it looks cool and it does feel like a championship to me. I'm sorry, I don't think it looks like a toy. And for most of its existence, the W didn't spin as well, right? So it doesn't have to spin it. In my opinion, I preferred it when it didn't spin. I know, I think that's now a hot take where I'm annoying people my own age. But I still do like this belt. I'm sorry, guys. But up next, we have the WWE Championship. They introduced the unified one in 2013, and I hated this, right? And the big reason I hated it was a mistake they later corrected, and that was the big champion strip at the bottom of it, right? And the W felt kind of just like it was like smushed a little bit together. I don't know, it just looked like a complete mess to me, and I hated it. In fact, I think it just belongs in the trash. But then they replaced it, didn't they, in 2014 with the WWE Championship belt, which they used for almost a decade. And honestly, I love this. I know, a hot take again, right? But I do think this feels like a proper championship belt. And it is unique. It's a unique shape. Of course, they then used the shape for a decade and overused it, sure. But if we're just looking at this belt, it was, at the time, a unique shape. The W felt like it was prestigious. Yes, it was huge, but it felt prestigious. And the side plates I absolutely loved, right? They could interchange them. And I thought that was awesome. It felt prestigious. It felt important. And you know what? I'm going to put this in the banger of a belt category. Do I think it's as good as the Winged Eagle? No, I do not, right? But I do think it is close. I'm sorry, it's a hot take, I know. But this belt, lasted 9 years. And you can't say that for many of these championships. It stood the test of time. The shape was unique and it felt like a big deal. I'm sorry, but it did exactly what I think a championship, a main championship, should do and should be. And of course, that brings us to current day, because last year they changed, now 2 years ago, 2023, they changed the championship belt and they made it gold. And listen, when this came out, I hated it, absolutely hated it. I thought they ruined the belt. But over time, especially seeing it in person and on screen, in the ring, I do think it looks a lot better, right? But I still think it is a step down from the previous design. I kind of feel like the W doesn't stand out as much. There's a little bit too much gold, and I still don't really understand why they changed it. But still, I do think it's decent, and I will put it in that category. Now, this is one of those where maybe if we have this for another 5 years, maybe it will grow on me. And if I redid this list in 5 years' time, maybe it would go up. But for me right now, this is my feeling. Now, guys, I know this is a controversial list. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. But again, it is just my personal ranking. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please like and comment. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.